Guys, I grew up in the Baptist church, so when I say good evening, I expect a loud roar. So I'm gonna try one more time. Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a good evening. Thank you guys for coming out to the National Center for Studying Human Rights, to our program, Daughters of the Movement. I'm excited for this panel tonight. We have some amazing panelists, some Daughters of the Movement. You guys are in for a special treat. I want to give a special thanks to our program coordinator, Mr. Cam in the back. You gotta give him a round of applause. Definitely want to start off by doing that. And again, my name is Autumn Smith. I am the program coordinator for our Truth and Transformation Initiative. The Truth and Transformation Initiative, also known as TNT, is our truth-telling side of the museum. We have an initiative that is for pushing towards telling the true history of Atlanta and racial violence and convict policing. And I work with our racial terror side. So that's why I'm here today. Moderating this panel, my experience comes from civil rights and human rights. I'm happy and honored to be here with such an esteemed panel, guys. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today. And right here to my left, we have Miss Elisa McNair. She is the oldest living sister of one of the victims of the 16th Street bombing in Birmingham. And next to her, we have Ms. Aisha Withers Mitchell. She is the granddaughter of one of the most famed photographers of the civil rights movement. I'm very happy to have her. She is the director of the Withers Museum in Memphis. And then last but not least, we have the granddaughter of Ambassador Andrew Young, Ms. Taylor Singh. Can we give a round of applause? So I'm going to start off with the easy question. What does it mean to be a daughter of the movement?
Absolutely. Start. Good evening, everybody. Thank y'all for coming. It's a lot of responsibility. My life was always different from the day I got here. So, I have two parts of the legacy. I have a son, the younger sister of Denise. Denise was killed in the bombing, and then I was born. She was the only child. I was born almost exactly a year from the day she was killed. So that has been with me the whole time. And then my father became the first Black legislator, and like Mr. Withers, he was documenting Black history and civil rights history in Birmingham. So he was the photographer. So he also has a historic collection of things. So then you're Chris McNair's daughter. So it just kind of all follows you. So I had to try to find out where my place is in it. And that's why now I travel the country speaking on bombing and reconciliation. How we are more alike than we are different, so to continue to carry on the message.
Ms. Aisha.
Well, I'm not a daughter, I'm a granddaughter. But I feel,
Excuse me.
I'm not a daughter, I'm a granddaughter. And I feel that growing up just a little after major civil rights events, so you're growing up with family and parents who are kind of maybe are past history, but still are impactful. It's in them, it's in every thread, it's in every conversation. It's in, you have to excel because, we just got this, you have to be perfect because, they're watching us. That is ingrained. And I think it's still ingrained in us, even 50 years later. So growing up, I grew up in Los Angeles, which was very different from growing up in the South. My father wanted out of the South. He said he did a sit-in at Woolworths, and everyone who did that sit-in was drafted. Although he had two brothers already over there. So when he came home, he said, I'm going west. So that's the frame of mind that I grew up with, being raised by someone who was like, there's more, there's better, I'm not putting my kids through this. So, yeah, I grew up knowing the power and the strength of overcoming and growing and what we possess, but also, very much aware of where we came from. So.
Yeah, sorry. For me, I'm also a granddaughter. It's the way that I grew up. I'm a preacher's kid on both sides. Well, my father was a preacher, his father was a preacher, my grandfather was a preacher on my mother's side. And the idea of to whom much is given, much is required. And, being the daughter or granddaughter of the movement, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out, like, what is the stuff that I care about? And like, what is my path and what I do? And what is kind of like my family's expectation, reputation, and trying to sort that out. And kind of trying to figure that out while forging your own path. But somehow for me, it's still in the realm of service. And sitting with that and acknowledging that, but making it my own. It's really interesting kind of seeing how my grandparents' lives were, how my parents' lives were, and how my life is, and now I'm a mother, and seeing the progression of rights being added, rights being taken away, and kind of sitting with that, and then figuring out, like, am I supposed to do something about it? Like, is that my role? Am I supposed to fix it? Trying to figure out, like, who am I in the context of all of this? And is it my responsibility? It's like, kind of like living with superheroes or, like, do I have powers? Do I not have powers? So that's kind of what I'm saying, like, trying to figure it out.
And to touch on what Taylor said a little bit about forging your own identity, you are actually a photographer. So how has your sister's legacy helped shape your career as a photographer, creating your own identity out of that?
That's interesting. Really more, my sister's legacy as, I represent that more so, not necessarily through my photography, kind of represent my dad through my photography and his excellence. How he taught me how to be a photographer. But through Denise, I share her story. I share the story of her and other girls and the tragedy of that day and what it did to our family as a whole. Last year I wrote a book, Dear Denise, Letters to the Sister I Never Knew. And in that, I share our family's loss, but also the story of how I moved through this earth and through this country as part of the first generation of African Americans to move freely after segregation. So by traveling and speaking, I feel like it's my responsibility to share her story honestly and wholly, and so that people will never forget and hopefully learn these lessons, and our country will be a better place and we won't commit these same atrocities over and over again.
Great point. And to stay on the same topic of photography, I want to talk about your grandfather's photography. How do you think that your grandfather's photography has shaped how we remember those significant events such as the Birmingham movement?
My grandfather has a saying that he always modeled, and it was pictures tell a story. So, although his bulk of his work was lifestyle and, showing the beauty of Memphis, he just is also a Black man who happened to be around in key parts of the movement. And he was also through his camera fighting his cause. So, he was a photographer in the Emmett Till case. You know, he put his life on the line and snuck and took a picture when Emmett Till's uncle pointed and said, "This is the man who murdered my nephew." Although those men got off, that's a key moment that if the pictures weren't taken, we wouldn't have a face to those people. My grandfather was there to take the Little Rock Nine. Those pictures are what you see, so we know that. So it's important, I feel, that we record and keep recording history. You know, now we do it in different ways in social media, you know, but if there was never all these records to demonstrate the struggle and the change and the times that we came, I mean, one of my favorite pictures is a woman who is holding up her voter's registration card. You know, excited and proud. Now, because she registered, they all were thrown out of their homes. So he also documented that. He was a photographer showing the last moments of Martin Luther King's life before he was killed the next day. So if we didn't have these moments and these images and they weren't displayed in history, then where would we be? Where would we be? Because if we don't tell the stories, then who's gonna tell them? If we don't tell them and show them, then so that's what I think my grandma was like as a photographer. Yes, telling the story.
So I wanted to ask Taylor, I know you've probably seen some amazing pictures the public has never seen related to your grandfather. How has seeing those personal records, personal pictures really, highlighted the movement, kind of brought it home, your grandfather was going through all those years?
I guess for me, seeing the photos, I mean, candidly, like I don't know what photos have been seen, haven't been seen, because I've seen them. So like taking out of context, like for me, it's like, oh well, and we were talking about this earlier, like, well, people know this because they've probably heard it like 1,000 times because, grandpa's everywhere. But my favorite photo is of my grandfather and Dr. King. I think they're in the airport lobby. And Dr. King is smoking a cigarette. And it's just like the most human moment. And I think that like we forget that these were people, like whole people, with lives, with families. And I think part of being a daughter of the movement is also like dealing with that trauma, right? Like the idea of these people who are lionized, who are heroes, are also imperfect, who have given so much to other people. There's a sacrifice on the family end. But then also like being privileged to like certain moments of joy that we don't allow our heroes to have. It's like, they were always tired, they were always struggling. And the story that I heard was like, before Martin was killed, like they were having a pillow fight. Cause like these were 30-year-old men, like, and we did like, I'm 35 now, so I'm like, what am I doing with my friends at 35? And so like when you realize looking back, like 24, you're a child. You're still figuring life out. And so then at 30, you're just kind of getting there. And like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. And it's like if they can find joy in these moments, like Martin loved to swim. Finding like my grandpa loved to ride bikes, finding joy, and then also finding like moments for self-care. Like it kind of sits with you, like, the importance of it.
I'd love to piggyback on that, I think every documentary, every piece, I feel like my parents was like, even when, like, I felt like I was too young to watch this. You know, I remember watching the Emmett Till a documentary years ago, Isaac Cross came out. And I remember being scared, but I'm five, like I'm young, you know, I'm not five, but I'm young, and I'm like, you know, they were like, you need to watch this, you need to know, you like, it was embedded. Now, me being a parent, I don't know if I would have shown my child that at such a young age, but you had to at that particular moment. And I remember now, like growing up in my 20s and thinking, you mean Martin Luther King was 26 years old when he started in the bus boycott in 1955? 26 years old, and not only that, but how well dressed they were. Do you see 26-year-olds? Now, look at me. I mean, I saw me at 26. I was, you know, in jean jacket and some jeans. I was not in a full dress, you know, but just the elegance and that came at that time, and to be 26. So that was my brain that I felt. You know, I felt like my grandparents were married, and my grandmother had all this civil rights photography out, and Martin Luther King. I was like, what am I doing with my days? You know, what am I doing? It was such like, he was 39 when he passed. You know, you win a Nobel Peace Prize before you are 39 years old. That is a legacy to, and it's also a burden, you know, because you feel that you are not doing enough. You know, so, you know, I say this to young people now, you know, they ran so we could have these, but let's not forget that there's still, you cannot stay rest comfortably forever because history repeats itself if you do.
Great point. Listen, I'm 27 and I'm gonna look like I gotta take another bath. I ran out of trash bags the other day. I was getting my grocery bags.
I was thinking a concert.
And so, okay, like, be living in learn. Okay. So I wanna pivot back to you. I wanna talk about more about, Birmingham, and, you know, we're coming off this March, and so, you know, everybody is commemorating the January's commemoration, we have February for commemoration, March. And so, we know we just had the Bloody Sunday commemoration in Southern Alabama. I want to know, how does Birmingham commemorate the 6th Street, you know, the movement there in Birmingham? Because it's not widely known. We know about, you know, Selma and the President, but how do we remember Birmingham?
Well, Birmingham remembers the four little girls, quite often. People in the city often talk about the four little girls and keep them in their memory. This year is actually the 60th anniversary of the bombing. So the city is doing a lot of things in connection with the bombing, but also 63 was a huge milestone for a number of things. You know, Dr. King wrote the letter from the Birmingham jail that year. Meg Rivers was killed in June of that year. The four girls were killed in September. So there's always a memorial service every year, no matter what day of the year it is. They have it in the morning, and they have it so that it will be there. They'll be doing it at 10:22, because 10:22 is when the bomb went off. And so they do that every year. So this year, they're gonna have a real big celebration. I heard they're trying to bring some really big names, but nobody will really tell me. But that I think it'll be, you know, the 50th anniversary, they did a statue to the girls, and then also the girls received the Congressional Gold Medal. So, and I watched a bunch of documentaries, and I think the country is remembering the girls. Every time we see a documentary produced in the last 5 years, when they get to that point in 63, they always acknowledge the girls and honor the girls. So I'm glad that they do that. I think it's so important that we don't forget them. But Birmingham has done a real good job of trying to honor them. Even the fifth little girl, because people often don't know that there were 5 girls in the bathroom that day. And Sarah Collins, whose sister Addie Mae was killed, survived. She lost an eye and had a lot of shrapnel damage, but she lives. And she has a book out and she tells her story. So they've done a real nice job of respecting her and honoring her as well.
Could you tell the story? I mean, for those who might not be aware of the Bonnie, can you give us a brief synopsis of that? What happened?
Sure.
Your perspective.
Sure. So the 16th Street Baptist Church at the time was one of the largest churches in the Birmingham area, one of the oldest Black churches. And it was a place where Dr. Martin Luther King and the other leaders would gather people together for their meetings before they marched. They were training sessions. It was a training place for training sessions. To tell you how to behave nonviolently, how to not carry certain items in your purse or your pocket, so that there would be no representation at all that you were trying to do anything harmful, that you were totally nonviolent. So and then when the Children's March took place that summer of '63, the kids left out of 16th Street marching. So it was a pivotal point. Birmingham also had a lot of dynamite because there were a lot of coal mines and the steel mills. So by the time the bombing had taken place, there had been at least 60 unsolved bombings in the city. But the bombing of the church was the only one where people were killed. So that morning, they had set the bomb, and there was a set of stairs, and at the bottom of the stairs below it, they placed the bomb, and that was on the wall on the other side was the women's restroom, and that's where the girls were. And that's when they were killed. Denise McNair, Annie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, and Carol Robertson were the 4 girls killed that day. Denise was 11 and the only child of my parents and the youngest of the 4. The other girls happened to be 14 and just starting their freshman years in high school. So the bombing was done in '63. The first person was not brought to justice until 1977. Spike Lee did a wonderful documentary, which you should see if you haven't seen it, 4 Little Girls in 1997. And that started a conversation, well, what about the other people that were also identified? Are they going to be arrested? So not till 2001 and 2002, the last 2 murderers that killed the girls brought to justice. So I hope that's a little bit of background. Did I say everything you want to say? Okay, I want to know if your granddad had some pictures of that day.
Excuse me. I just, I'm a parent, I think I just talk loud, I'm sorry. I know that he has pictures of Medgar Evers and his parts of the movement and his presence. Can't attest, my cousin is sitting right in the audience, he may know, but I do know that he did frequent that area a lot after that happened. But the collection, I wanna say my grandfather's collection right now is 1.8 million photos.
I believe it.
Yes, it's 1.8 million. Not only was, one of its civil rights, well, my grandfather was known to carry 2 cameras. So he took one with this camera, and then he would take with the other one, lifestyle, of course, a lot. He covered the, New England Baseball League, he was a baseball fan. He was the on-site photographer for Stax Records. But I know the relationship with Medgar, and there were a lot of photos with him, and this is why the relationship with Raina Evers and the Hooters family still continues to this day. So I will definitely, we're gonna reach out, so I'll definitely piggyback on that. Yes.
you know, happy we can be there. And so I wanna ask, Taylor, I do wanna ask, so we were talking a little bit about tragedy. So, you know, our civil rights leaders, they dealt with a lot of tragedy. We had a lot of martyrs, a part of the civil rights movement. And if you guys haven't had a chance to go through our exhibit, we actually have a section dedicated to the martyrs and the civil rights movement. There were a lot, and I wanna know, you know, what were some of the lessons they taught you, Andrew Young, or, you know, other people around, and you know, taught you about just dealing with the grief and, you know, moving forward and, you know, doing things in legacy of those who have lost.
That's a good question. I mean, my grandpa's 91 now, right? And, I watched him as he's been kind of dealing with the deaths of the people who remained, the people who survived. 2020 was a particularly hard year. It was back to back, 60 billion and John Lewis. It was like we didn't, like, you were calling about one and then you heard about the other. And it's kind of like, what does it mean to be left? But my grandma talks about like, he didn't fear death, he doesn't fear death. And so there was never a conversation about like, you know, how do we honor those, but I think that there are moments where he's like, you know, oh, and Hank Aaron, like every year, we're losing more and more people. Which is why it's important for events like this to happen, so that people will remember and know. But you know, I think watching him deal with that has been interesting because it's like it's moments of grief, but also like it's a fear of slowing down. Like if you're out in Atlanta, like you'll see grandpa because like he just doesn't slow down. I think that there's a fear of doing that, and I think that's a lot of what happened during the pandemic in 2020. All these people who have been moving nonstop for 50 plus years couldn't go anywhere. But like, you know, as you go to more and more funerals, there are fewer and fewer friends. You know, they don't really talk about it too much, but you kind of see it. It's also like, he's taking advantage of big longer. He says what he wants to say. Anyway,
You see him around like.
oh, yeah, like he's homeless.
He's my grandmother.
Exactly.
I have to say, I you know, my grandmother and I appreciate him even now throughout the relationships. I mean, there was a documentary recently on PBS of my grandfather, and your grandfather was on, and he has always been just one of the people that I've always admired. So this is me and you. It's been like, oh, thank you.
Well, like, your grandfather's pictures are important because like the burden of remembering. And like there are fewer and fewer voices and fewer and fewer people who are there to remember. And so we can, I think to your point, like if we can look through those pictures, very few that remain and point to these moments that this is what was happening, or that's who this is. Because there are a lot of people in all these photos and we do not have names for all those people. And to think that it was like the same 5, 10, 20 people is inaccurate. To think it was the same 5, 10, 15, 20 men is grossly inaccurate. Because the secret is the women were the geniuses. And then like, they are the ones who were like the real masterminds and then still had dinner on the table and taking care of the kids, will say, maybe you should think about doing this.
I totally say, there will be no Dr. Ernest Withers if there wasn't Dorothy Mae Curry Withers. I mean, back then, it wasn't a social media, it was girlfriends on the phone calling her, did you hear about this, march is going down? Which in turn, she would say, get up, and she would be in the business of even drawing the photos in the oven for him.
Wow.
You know, there would be, I will repeat, Dr. Ernest C. Withers if there was no Dorothy Mae. And, yes, it was the women.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, we give the men credit for us or whatnot. Or who's that?
Yes. So yes, no, we give credit to the women like Elevator and Curtis Scott King.
Yes. And we would have to, think about the legacy that, Emmett Till's mother. There would be none of this story would be told, it wasn't the strength of Emmett Till or Medgar Evers, Dr. Marilee Evans. If she didn't fight and continue, I mean, God bless her, but these women, and Coretta, who continued to represent their child and husbands, past their deaths. We do, never have to throw our hats off in this march of Women's History Month. Yes, let's not remember the women of the men.
And so I did want to ask you, how important is your grandfather in border cards and other in broadcasting the African showing that to us?
Very important. 2 reasons. My family and I, one of the things that is a big topic today is, people may not like the term critical race theory. Let me not get, but these pictures and these images to match these stories are important. And let me say this, as when you are taught in history and books your whole life, all of us have gone to school, and your history has always been one-sided, what it does is it creates a superior attitude in a certain race, and it creates an inferior attitude to the rest of the people of color. So when you don't include, and this is not Black history, it's just history, it's in America. When you don't include all these people from all walks of life and pictures in these history books, then these children who are learning grow up to feel like they have not made significant changes in parts of history when they have. The biggest thing that a child can see is images that look like them, that did amazing things. But if you only have one race of people, and some of them is not even true. Some of these history stories, let's not forget it, we actually gave the truth and said, this president that we've idolized enslaved people. Then there would be maybe more empathetic behavior towards other people. If we put these history and these pictures and these images and these stories within the fabric of our society, I believe that us as a human race, we are different ethnicities, but us as a human race would treat each other more humanly. So I think, again, pictures tell a story. And that is why it's important to right these wrongs in history books.
Get you guys. Get you guys to pay for that.
Oh, I think the history, her dad's pictures, my dad's pictures are so very important. Because they do share our shared American history, because this isn't Black history, civil rights history, it's American history. Until we deal with it wholly and fully, we're not gonna be a whole as a country. And I think that that's the next wave that we need to be responsible for, is making sure that all of the history books in the country, the United States of America, teach the same lessons, that nobody is left out. I'm a member of a small nonprofit that started after George Floyd was killed, called the Morgan Project. And our goal in what we have done is written a curriculum to include Black history. And along with other history, we based it on, we had a person who's a genius, a professor who wrote it and well noted in the state of Alabama. And she wrote the curriculum that includes all the history, and it's based on the state standards and national standards. And so we're trying to get that in all the classrooms in the state of Alabama. When right as we got started, the CRT crack started coming up and people started acting crazy. So the state superintendent got scared, but we forged on. And so we've been doing workshops, teaching the teachers that curriculum for the last 2 years. And finally, at the end of last year, there's a site called Schoology, where all teachers can access curriculums or things to learn. And although the state of Alabama has not officially said they approve our curriculum, they have uploaded our curriculum to the Schoology site, that all teachers in the state know that it's there. So that's it. So that's a step in the right direction, and we're gonna have a retreat the next couple of weeks. And I'm gonna say, okay, let's go to Georgia next. And let's go, let's be Florida for last 2 nights. Get that going, because that's really what has to happen. Because, tour groups are nice, pictures are nice, but it's gotta be something that's gonna hit every child in America. And so that's my thing about the pictures and how important they are for our history.
Yeah, I went to the University of Georgia, and I took an African American Studies course at the University of Georgia. And I remember sitting there, and one of the assignments was like, if you wanted to, was to go to the Without Sanctuary website and look at the photos of the mess. And that's when I realized that the remembering is different. Because to me, like, what happens to Black people in history is like, this is what happened to us. But the responsibility of this is what we did to those people does not exist. So many of my white classmates like, well, I can't believe these people would do something like that. And my response was, what do you mean these people? Because there has to be like, they might not be in these photos, but if you're from Georgia, you have to know somebody. Like, and to think like some of these people, like, for me, Hamilton Holmes, Charlotte Hunter Galt, integrated at the University of Georgia in 1961. You mean to tell me that you generationally went to the University of Georgia and nobody you knew was in those photos? Not a neighbor, not somebody you went to church with, but like, the experience feels more personal when you consider that Dr. King's only grandchild is a teenager. Like, this is a history, like, these are real people. And so, like, the idea that, like, what happened was so far away in the past, but now you hear about these records over Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas, whatever. The pictures are important because it shows who was there and who was doing what and what side you were on. And I think there has to be some acknowledgement and proof, like, oh man, like, maybe my family was was there, right? Because when I take my grandfather in photos, somebody has to be taking their grandfather in the same photo. And it's like, there has to be this sense that, and it's not to say like, you have to have this white guilt, but acknowledgement that like the history is recent. Like it's not even like we're here. Right? Like people are still alive. And dealing with the trauma. But you still hear people today talk about I was listening to NPR, I live in NPR. This family found out that like their grandfather was like actually a member of the Nazi party. And so it's like how do you reconcile these things? You learn about these things, but like she don't have to get a picture. And so as as we look through these photos and track our family histories and who was there, like what the event was, there has to be a mutual reckoning. Everybody kind of sit there and say, oh, like I didn't know that so and so, like I didn't know that the civil rights movement and the Latino labor movement, like the people were cool, but they're pictures, right? So like then it inspires interest and learning, which is why it's important for it to be the curriculum. And the AP African American history, they talk about how they had to revise it because there were too many secondary sources. Photos are primary sources. So we use photos, right? To remember, to be able to hold account. So that when the people are gone, the photos are there.
Yeah, I can say one thing to that. Reverend Billy Cobbs, who's no longer with us, but she had pictures of him.
Pictures of that, I was with his daughter today.
Cool.
Joanna Powell, she was one of the first 13 to integrate members.
And so I used to know him when I was on the civil rights tour, and he would do this speech. He called it The Witness. It's amazing. HBO did a documentary about it, so I highly recommend everybody look that up. But one thing he was saying in his speeches was race and segregation is painful for Black people, but shameful for white people. So what we do is we just sweep it under the rug and we don't deal with it. But the only way for true healing to take place is to take it out from the rug and deal with it. And I've never forgotten that he said that, because that is so very, very true. Unless we totally take all of our dirt out from under the rug and have honest conversations about what happened, and then can we move forward and say, okay, that happened, and we're not gonna do that anymore. But we need to know what that looks like in order to know when we see it coming up again, or when it might try to rear its ugly head again, and we can say, no, that's not what we do.
Yeah, I agree, but there, the word of tongue is always, a very big thing. What does that look like? What does that look like for us going forward? I mean, yes, there is civil rights, but there's also, now that we're discovering more, we have, actual places that were thriving and existing. And, Seneca Village, people didn't know about that. Now they know about that. This is Central Park. A whole town of thriving Black Americans were living there and were pretty much bottomed out, Black Wall Street. These things aren't in the history books, and we look like a people that have always just asked and asked and asked for our rights without saying, we actually did this, but you took it, and you took it. I mean, there are records right now. I was in a speech recently. The federal government would not, HUD loans, wouldn't give it to Black Americans, although they had money. Most people's wealth came from the equity in their homes. So then that means we're behind. And if we are in Martin Luther King's thing, the last part of the Bernice King, Dr. Bernice King has talked about this, the last part of this message was economics. That's the part that is scary. That's the part that is scary. That's the part that is scary that we talk about. So there's a lot of atonement that would have to happen. And what does that look like? And it doesn't mean that, I think that the people who are upset with the critical race theory think that we just want to take it back and, that's not what that is about. It's recognition, it's resolve, it's creating a part of history that we belong in. And what that looks like to us and what that looks like to others is a harsh reality of atonement. There will be some actions required after all that is in play, and that's a scary thing for America, I think. And that's why I do believe in these pictures. One of the things that I like to see, that my family is very instrumental in is getting a curriculum based in school, like you said, based on the works of my grandmother.
I think that's great. I think that's amazing, to hear your perspective on critical race theory. It's very important. I think what most people don't realize is that it is exactly what the word is, a theory. There is it's something, a tool to use during research, right? There are different types of theories. There's feminist theory, there's Marxist theory, there's theory that is based on, the stuff, right? I think a lot of people, they took a word or a phrase and they used it to just, to criminalize, right? Or to say that this is a wrong type of history or it's a radical type of history, and that's not reality. Reality is it's created by W.E.B. Du Bois in 1930, and so I think it's just been used in the wrong type of way. And I'm glad that you all touched on that. And then you mentioned the Without Sanctuary. I don't know if you all are familiar, but we actually have that collection here at the center. We have ownership of it. It's a collection of lynchings that happen primarily in the South. We have a lot of collections that have a lot of lynchings that happen here in Georgia primarily. We have some very famous lynching images, such as we have Leo Frank, Jewish man that was lynched. He's a prominent member of the Jewish temple here. So, I think seeing those images, I'm happy that, I'm happy it came like full circle. Oh, that's something we have, to understand that and to show those images to people and to understand that, you have to bring, I think, light to the ugliness of what is happening. And you were talking about having that conversation between, people who are, the perpetrators, right, of this history. And, that's one thing we strive to do here, especially with TNT, right? We hope to do that in September. Guys, come out. We're going to have some programming, and hopefully it will be a descendant conversation we have and perpetrators of the 1906 Atlanta race massacre that happened in September in 1900s. So, I appreciate you for bringing that up. I think it's very important and to variety to that, and hopefully that's something we can do as a center.
Yeah, because these weren't candid photos, these were posed, people would stand and take pictures next to the bodies and then they put them on postcards. And so, it's a really tough thing to sit with, to see the lynching in a picture, but then to see people smiling and posing. It was a county event.
And let's just talk about that the federal law for no more lynching was just passed last year. Do you know how many years of lynching has gone on in this country? And for finally, it hasn't gone up before, federal before? Yes, it has. But why is it that the federal government did not want to pass a law to stop lynching, and it did not pass until last year? Well, these are things that I feel when you talk about putting history in books, and I told her that when you put these things in these books, that it brings to the kids born and raised with a more human aspect in them to their fellow man. Because without this, then no one cared, if we did not see that section in our history books, then it's not been an issue. It's not been an issue until it started happening again. History started repeating itself. We did not record and put history in these books that it wouldn't. So you have to.
To stay, well, to pivot a little bit, to stay on the same topic, but how important is it for you to work at your family's museum to honor your grandfather that shows his photography? Is the members of you all ever in this, please? Yeah, on Bill Street. Bill Street is a good time, guys, okay? Right, people, please go to Bill Street, okay? But no, get a little history while you're there. Visit the museum. But how important is that for you to work in that institution to make sure that history that your grandfather wanted to be remembered is being broadcast to the world and making it available to the public?
Great question. Sometimes growing up, because it was so embedded in everything, you kind of run. You know, you kind of run because it's like, what do you want me to do with all of this? This is a lot. This is a lot, and where I feel like all of us, now that we're older, my cousin is there, and I'm hoping to pass my daughter to, hoping to pass this on. But you come to a realization of how important. Now I look at it, I've always admired my grandfather and just respected and just, you know, I've seen video of my grandfather getting beat, you know, taking photos, like I've seen it, you know, I remember seeing this years ago, and I was like, I don't want that, you know, with all that came with it, you know, even now his name is out there, like that's a lot of pressure on one's family, but you have to now it has turned to purpose for me. It has turned to absolute purpose, because why wouldn't I want to share with this country's history? Why would I keep that? Why would I keep that? Why would I keep that from children and children and children? You know, these pictures, I mean, and I'm talking, as proud as I am about civil rights pictures, I'm proud of his capturing the Negro baseball. I'm Satchel Paige. I have a picture of my father and uncles with Satchel Paige. That's one of my favorite pictures, you know, pictures of Jackie Robinson. I have, you know, just pictures of, he was, you know, like I said, the museum, the arts, just to me, considering in all avenues of life, consider where Black music is now and rap music is now, to see the struggle of musicians at that time and where we've come. I feel like you always have to look in your past to remember and respect your perfect presence. So right now, it is a passion to me. It is a passion to ensure that the legacy of Dr. Ernest Withers is seen and spread and then around the world, and that we recognize it and we look at these people and these images as making, and everyone, not just the famous names, everyone who made the imprint of pushing this forward, that their names are out there. So that's what it is to me, to work into, you know, his video, there's a video that plays of him talking every day when you walk into, it's still weird. Like I walk in there sometimes, I'm like, Granddad, you know, it's still, I mean, he's been gone since 2007, but just I sit there at the video sometimes and just marvel at the history that he's telling on his videos about these times and these moments, and I wish that everyone had that. Yes, that is my advice for everybody in their family. talk to your elders now. Talk to your, your parents, your mom, your grandparents, because they won't always meet you. And I'm blessed, and my family is blessed that we have these to push on, but do it all because we all have history within the history. So that is your history. So it is important to record, snap. You got these iPhones, use them. Sit by your grandmother one day and just ask her about her time. Because, life is fleeting and I'm just blessed to have that. So that's the beauty of this work. To be around and involved in it. Is that, wow, I'm his granddaughter. That's amazing.
I guess I'll ask the final question. I'll start with you, Taylor. How do you carry the legacy of?
I don't know what I do. I think that, and this is what I've kind of like grappling with, like he, forged his own path. And it's funny because as you talk to your elders, and as I get older, as I get older, they start telling me more and more, and you're like, oh, they tell you. And one of the things that he told me about was like how he felt inadequate compared to his own grandfather, who in New Orleans was responsible for the bankrolls of multiple organizations in the city. And so he was sitting on millions of dollars. And so grandpa's kind of like chasing that, like, how do I contribute to on that level? And so I think, but I've also been like, as I retired, I came back to Atlanta 2 years ago, and as an adult, learning more and more about my grandmother. And what I've been learning is that, believe it or not, my path is more in line with what she's contributed. She was my job before this current one. I was at DC Public Schools doing family engagement, and I come to find out she had written a whole family engagement handbook for LA Public Schools. Her dedication to children, specifically to children of the world, but also the children of Atlanta, that's the path that I walked in. And so it's like, yes, I'm Andy's granddaughter. I'm gonna be that. And if I walk into the room, somebody knows, like, yeah, that's who I am. I'm also G Child's youngest granddaughter, right? And that's how I show up. Like that's the legacy that I carry. Because like I said before, without her, it was like you were saying, without her, there wouldn't be any young because he wouldn't come down to the South. Because she and Prescott King were from the same town in Alabama, Marion, Alabama, which for those of you who are familiar with Alabama State, that's where Alabama State was founded as a living rule. And so the sense of responsibility to return south to do something was because of the women. It was like, this is my family, what am I do about it? And that's I'm her child.
I like that. The woman child. I like that. So I actually such
I have to agree with that. People ask me, my cousin called me one day, because I remember that. Then he called me and said, hey, Mindy, I was that's what he called my grandma. And I almost fell out that car. And when I was in Los Angeles, I wanted to run to Atlanta with you. But I have to say, that's a compliment. Because my grandmother had 7 boys and 1 girl, the last one was a girl. My grandmother was off a lot, traveling and taking pictures all over the place. And I would say she kept everything running. There's an excerpt that I saw recently in the documentary where she said, she counted in what he was supposed to bring back for those pictures. That's how they raised their family. It wasn't just about as far as he was a photographer. So that happened to cross moments, and he happened to cross paths with Andrea and Dr. King, who told him, like, we have no support from anybody in the South. So you gotta get these pictures out west and then to New York and to life, because the world needs to see what is going on. And those pictures were for protection purposes. And I need you to capture this so we can send this out and see how we are being treated right here. And he understood the assignment. So yes, I am Dr. Ernest Withers, but with the vision, there would be no vision if there wasn't for me. And I'd like to say that my strength comes from her.
Last but not least.
My dad's pictures, it's a big collection of pictures, quite that big, it's pretty daunting. It fills up the whole room, so, and he did develop some of the ones from the civil rights movement with Dr. King and Andrew Young and Reverend Shuttlesworth, and so, he had a few of them, but it was just a small number. And as he got older, he just couldn't get them all out, so my sister and I have been working with Getty Images to get the images out to the public. So that's our goal, to kind of go through those negatives, scan them, upload them, go through the ones we didn't know, and not only, your granddad, he had Black Life in Alabama, Black Life in Birmingham. He shot for Ebony and Jet, so pictures of Ebony and Jet hired him to take those images as well. And but then there are other pictures in there. The other day I was going through, and there was Gregory Peck, the guy from Kill Mockingbird, who come to Birmingham for something, and he was hanging out with people. So I was like, oh my God, it's Gregory Peck. So, and Ethel Waters came to Miles College. HBCU for something, so there's pictures of her. So it's a process, At first I just been doing it, and then my sister, she started working fast enough, which I was good now. It's like, okay, good, then you can come help me do that. So now I've got a partner in crime, and so we're trying to just get as many of these images out for the world to see. So I'm excited about it.
Make sure you retain ownership.
Yeah, because if you don't put your name on it, somebody else will. I did, that's part of the slow process because I am a photographer. So I had to scan them in, put the metadata in Lightroom,
Right.
then upload, and then, then I had my lawyer look at all of that's
Yes, because I know that's one of the things that Getty bought, Jet and Ebony's collection, but Jet and Ebony own all those pictures.
But now, so far, they've been very fair, and we mentioned that a guy is writing a book about his dad, who was a white guy that helped some people, and he wanted one of our pictures, reached out to Ebony and Jet. Ebony and Jet sent them to the museum, the national, and said, we can't give you that picture. That picture belongs to Chris McNair.
Right.
And you have to purchase it for him.
Right.
So somebody's doing the right thing.
Right.
They told us to do right, but I appreciate it. So I'm excited to do that. I just, wish I had 36 hours in the day.
Well, thank you, ladies. You all were amazing. And we have enough time to take 1 or 2 questions from the audience? Yes, would any audience members like to?
Hello, my name is Catherine Wesley. I am a sophomore in sociology. I'm minded from Los Angeles, California. But I am representing, I'm representing Spelman College.
I'm representing Spelman College, Social Justice Program, and I'm also a John Lewis Scholar, so I have questions. Yeah, so in what ways do you think HBCUs are upholding the legacy of the civil rights era, or what could they do to honor your family's legacy?
I am an advocate of HBCUs. I am an HBCU attendee. I'm a Southern. My daughter is there. These are all Clark students. Okay. My oldest daughter was a fifth. My daughter's a 5th generation HBCU. Do we need to do more? Yes. But we also need the funding. That is the problem with HBCUs, and it's not fault of HBCUs. I think that we are more critical on our colleges than we are to others. HBCUs don't get the funding that other universities do. I mean, Spelman is one of the ones that gets more a lot of funds than others. I do think that Spelman and Morehouse do a great job of preserving history. But one of the things that I would have to say, we were approached from an Ivy League college, y'all won't, name them, and they wanted to create a master's program based on the works of Ernest Withers. Not one, and HBCU has not approached us for that. They don't have the money, they don't have the funding, but I just don't think that is even part of the thought process. I think that HBCUs are so concentrated on preparing us to enter in these other spaces that they have forgot the significant spaces that we are already in that also need to be taught in our schools. And I feel that there definitely needs to be a board that gets HBCs on the mission of putting our heritage and our stuff into these schools, because the further we get removed, you see it in our students. Because we're taking parts of history, no disrespect to this generation. And I laugh at this stuff sometimes too. But we're taking significant parts of history that I wouldn't dare use it as a meme. But we are now. And that's because we are further and further removed. I'm born right after the civil rights era. You guys are like 30 to 40 years, 50 years born. So the further away we are, the more it doesn't seem as significant. And it is. Because if it's not, it's creeping right back up. We're fighting for civil rights right now again. So I do feel that HBCUs need to do a job, granted with funding, to push our heritage back. And I think that we feel that we don't need to teach African American history, because if you ask students just simple things, they don't know. There are people who are living in Tulsa who didn't know about Tulsa and grew up there. So no, we do not know. And I think that needs to be recognized. That answers your question.
Yes, it does.
Oh, so I did not go to HBCU, and I know to stay out of HBCU business.
Because we're good.
One of the things that someone kind of laid out to me was the exponential impact of HBCU. So that even if you didn't attend one, you were impacted by someone who did, right? So, my father was Talladega, multiple generations went to Howard. My sister was still in the Morehouse. My family, like I said, we're married in Alabama, one of the founders of Lincoln Normal, now Alabama State. And my family's legacy, I'm feeling a little bit personal about this right now because I just came back from New Orleans. And one of the things that I've been doing, because that's where my grandfather is from, is kind of like saying, okay, well, what was his experience there? Like, getting to know that city, as a place that I feel rooted to. Like, Marion, Alabama is a place, New Orleans is a place that I feel rooted to. And, when my grandfather's parents died, they donated the house to Dylan. And so one of the things that I've done the last 2 times I've been there is gone to the house. And it's bittersweet because the house is still there, and it's New Orleans. The house may not still be there, but it's not in real repair, and it's not being used. It's chained up. There's a plaque that has my great-grandparents' name on it, but it's not, it was supposed to be a Baptist center, but it's not being used for that. And so it's like, full transparency, I don't know how to spell it, right? Like, full transparency, because I understand there's a certain swagger and confidence that you have. Because it's interesting that you said, like, y'all didn't know the history, so I was like, I thought that was part of it, right? Like, that's what I've been told about. But, for me, like, I knew, yeah, right, like, I was part of NSL, right? Like, that's kind of but yeah, I think that, and I'm from DC, so like, I grew up in DC. Every year, growing up, I'm seeing Howard selling off more and more property, and then I'm like, well, why are we complaining that Pepper doesn't look like Pepper's anymore? Because it used to be Howard. And I think that part of that comes down to needing more advocates in government to say, like, yeah, sure, Howard's getting federal funding, they have their own section of the budget. But like, what is that money? People need to go back and yes, donate, but also like take a look at some of these contracts that, HBCUs have a lot of social capital in terms of like, and cultural capital that we taken advantage of. The Ralph Lauren project was a mess. And I think there was a lot of potential for that to be like raking in money nonstop, just off the swagger. Right. And I think that because there is a desire for acceptance, which like to me these girls going to the agency, like that long stride. I think that and I'll finish. I don't know, I think there's a lot of potential for HBCUs to hold the line of culture and significance in history. But we gotta take a look at various boards and also like how these endowments are set up, like advocate for these endowments, like you were raising money, like does it have to go into this movie? And so like give your money when you graduate, but also give your time. Like if you like look at these contracts, offer to do these, like join the boards, because that's stuff is getting missed and I don't know how to keep happening and there's no reason why, UGA has got all these lawyers and I'm sure that there are phenomenal lawyers who went to the Morehouse and Spelman who can look over these contracts, but you gotta look through it. So yeah, but.
Thank you.
They did good. Somebody else asked a question.
We have a question.
Hello, my name is Miracle Huntsman. I'm a sociology major with a minor in political science. I attend the illustrious University. I'm also an intern and a change agent for the Joseph and Evelyn Lowry Institute, which is, led by Cheryl Lowry, who's the daughter of both of them. So civil rights is very important to me. So my question for you all, I'm thinking back to part of the conversation we were talking about, how this information about these figures are not really shown in history books and not really taught, which is true. I'm from LA, growing up, we usually were only taught about, except for from our family and school books, we were really taught about MLK, Rosa Parks, maybe a couple other figures and how they fit. So we can put pressure on the government, we can put pressure on the school system, but before that happens, what is your advice for us and young people to spread the awareness amongst each other? Because we're fortunate enough to go to ABCs and learn these things, but other people aren't, and it's usually easier to tell someone that is your equal, get them to understand versus them, learning from the school.
Can I answer that? That was a great question.
Very good question.
I think I got my degree. I didn't go to HBCU either. I went to undergrad at Georgia State University, but I did receive my degree in African American Studies. And what I did learn is that it didn't matter if I had a lot of friends who went to Morehouse and stuff like that. That's obviously where I gravitated to. But I realized is that even they didn't know a lot of African American history. Even if you know the history of Morehouse, you know, to even get an African American Studies program, they had to lock their board. You know, they locked Daddy King, Samuel Jackson, you know, and his friends locked Daddy King in the room, you know, the board of trustees of Morehouse. So, you know, I think it starts within our community in valuing our history, valuing African American history. I think now, you know, there's this push where it's popular, right? I think like in the late 90s, Kente Cloth and everything like that, being pro-black was popular in pop culture, and we see that happening now. But I think there has to be an understanding of that it's not just, okay, this is what's popular, because it's happening in media, but we need to understand what this history is, teach this history. I think that it's not really being taught, and I see like, you know, the TikToks and the Instagrammers, like, you know, they do their videos, but I think it has to be as, you know, a 60-second clip. It has to be talked about in more forums, right? Like right now we have this program, but we have to have more programs like this. I know we like to, you know, we like to go out to the club, we like to have a good time, but sometimes, you know, we have to sit down and realize, you know, what is important for our culture right now, and what should be emphasized on right now, not the kind of starts within our community, just emphasizing our history. So that's kind of my perspective on that.
Yeah. So you know, this is such a great question because I feel like the further, you know, excuse me, sorry. Great question. I feel like the further removed we are, the further removed we become. And I want to say, and this is totally, you know, there needs to be responsibility. You know, I grew up in the hip hop era, so I'm not opposed to hip hop. But I want to say, with us growing up, we had a balance. We had our fun, and we had a lot of politically driven, socially conscious music out there. And if you know the history of music in our country, there's a lot of there were songs that actually brought change. You know, I'm Black and I'm Proud started a movement that was basically premiered the night of Martin King died. You know, there were songs. The attention span of today's youth is about 60-second clip of TikTok. I mean, it's not just for kids. For a lot of people, just don't read. So that means that there needs to be groups that do collective series of learning, I feel, within music and in channels to push that through schools, to push that through whatever is a change. There needs to be these organizations say that she started, you know, need to also think about this current audience. This current audience needs to be pushed information in short time frame. So I feel that that's what we need, that it, you know, it needs to come from music. We need to have more change in the artists that we sign. You know, it's unfortunate that, you know, there's a saying that they just don't, they're not signing, these record companies are not signing anything with a positive content. They don't want you to get positive content. This is where they want your conscious levels to grow. So I feel that there needs to be several organizations, union organizations that pushes out mass across the world. Let's change the narrative. You know, I read something recently where in China, what we see on TikTok is not allowed in China. They see positive, uplifting stuff while we're getting them down daily. They don't allow the mess that we see to go into their kids' cycle. So there needs to be something that's at the level that keeps these history in today's form throughout the day. And that's the only thing, and we need to change the narrative. We as a people could stop supporting these narratives that push nothing but gossip on us. We can stop supporting it. Someone can step up, and it has to be youth. It was youth that started the civil war. So it has to be youth that does it now. You guys can stop supporting avenues like the Shade Room and Spiritual Gangster and things that are just constantly pitting us against one another. So it means it needs to be kids who start these social avenues of change. Because this is your generation, you're speaking to your people. So I don't speak 26. I don't speak 22, I don't speak 17. So just like it was changed from the youth, the Stormy Carmichaels, the Martin Luther Kings, the young people that were making this change, it has to be. So I advise, to me, every nonprofit take a branch of young people under it to reach young people. It's important that you're with Joseph Lowery, because Joseph Lowery's organization is not in today's currency, in today's current climate. So sometimes it's not, they don't see it through the eyes of young people. So I feel like every organization can stand to have a youth council.
Yeah, I kind of did what she said. But growing up, we had the church. The church needs to get back active, and we had name teacher and then in school, but at church all the signs of Black history. We had extra, you do posters and put them up. The church, the sororities, the fraternities need to make that an integral part of their social outreach to change, because it's gonna have to come through us. We don't have a curriculum in all the schools yet, so we have to do grassroots, neighborhood associations. In our neighborhood in Birmingham, every neighborhood has a recreation center that the kids can come and play. Somebody should make that once a month there's a lecture or there's a contest to learn. We can be done, but it's going to take everybody, and it's going to take all one.
Oh, well, they made good points. One thing I would say, some of the most insightful things I learned were from my peers, particularly across the diaspora. Because if you take a look at the dates, the African Liberation Movement was happening at the same time. It's not coincidental. But instead, a lot of times the competition that we're having is not one of, like putting the pieces together. It's more like, well, we went through this, but we went through that, so I like this, I like that. And so sitting down and learning and sharing your experiences, your history, you're living it. You have fewer rights than your parents did. That's the truth of the matter. So what's your story? I think that's the important part, start sharing it. Because, I mean, someone's gonna write something about this experience, and why not be you? Like, you know, just start writing and start sharing it. On the way back, well, on the way to New Orleans, I was just staying in Hamilton, it's 2.5 hours, so it'll get you through. And when it's just like, who lives, who dies, who tells their story? And all we keep hearing, to Aisha's point, is like, I don't even know who the rappers are anymore, like, I'm so washed. Like, but like, that's what we hear about the experiences of anybody who's up to the age of 25, like, that's the story. Share your experience, it's valid, it's yours. And don't let other people tell you your experience is valid. Don't do that. Don't do it. You know, it's like you are whole people. And how you remember things will be what is taught in the future, so just try it. I need to do that too.
And then one other thing I want to add to what I did say before, Aisha was saying about her parents set her down and watched the Eyes of the Prize. That's still good, and that still holds up. So I think that, you know, everybody should make their child sit down and watch Eyes of the Prize. It's like long, it's like what, 4 hours? That's all it is. And so it was a series, but I remember my parents sitting us down, it was like several Mondays in a row. When it came on live, you know, I was
had the lights on.
That was my whole UGA African American history class.
But I watched it again. PBS is my favorite thing. PBS, like, you could erase all the channels of your house and just have PBS. PBS gets it right. And Dr. Henry Louis Gates, oh my God, it's amazing. But I watch PBS at my house, I go all the time I'm working. And they replay in January, February, they'll usually replay the Eyes on the Prize. So it's like the first series that starts with Emmett Till and ends with King dying. Then there's another one that starts after King died and goes to about 75 with stuff I had no clue about that I watched.
I don't think I'm gonna start a Reconstruction.
Now that's Henry Louis Gates' series about Reconstruction, and so that's like a 4-hour thing.
Came out at 8. I mean, that, my mom,
It came out in the 70s.
70s, yes. Well, I
But it told about the movement from Emmett Till to King, the first section, and then they went back again and brought it up to about 75 or 76. But it's documentaries, which are much better than a TV show.
this needs to be shown in school.
It needs to be shown as part of the history, because it's actual people who are no longer here. And experiences that really, you know, resemble, you know, like you say, that taught you Rosa Parks, you know, Dr. King, I Had a Dream. You know, Eyes of the Prize gets everybody and everything and all the details that we need to know as African Americans and we need to know as Americans in this country.
I, you know, like, for instance, I had somebody, and she mentioned churches. Churches need to be more active. You know, churches have gotten this, I love the Lord, let's pray, but at a certain time, churches were very intricate and involved in the community. But I remember being at church one day and meeting the one whose her grandfather created the recipe for Dome's Baptist. You guys remember that? I don't even know if they were.
They don't remember those.
Dome's Baptist, they were paintings. He created that, but at the time, they did not allow patents for Black people to exist. You couldn't get a patent. So there's a lot of work that belongs to people of color that other people are confident taking control over because we weren't allowed to get a patent. You know, so these are things that could be a whole segment that youth of TikToks that can go out about all these things that have been invented or hidden because of this pattern. It's just, we don't know. We just don't know. And even as much as you've heard about Martin King, you didn't know that you could get a patent. How many people know that the super server was created by Black men? I know. But how many of you guys know? Do you know? Cell phones. How many of you knew that? GPS. The stoplight. I mean, there's some questionable things about Grand Bagel. I mean, so these are things that are just part of history that I feel need to be shared in a way that the current youth can do. And I think that it takes youth to create these for organizations.
Can we give a round of applause for our so much. You all are amazing. I love this multi-generational panel. I feel like we have about every generation that's here. You all are amazing. And you all are an amazing audience. And that's for your wonderful questions. And so I will turn over to our program coordinator, Mr. Cameron, to come up and say a few words. He put this whole thing together.